Donald Trump's second impeachment trial opens tomorrow, and NPR spent the entire morning today interviewing people about how Trump has already been held accountable. Obviously, because he will be remembered by history as the only president to be impeached twice. That's enough, right? According to NPR, his wrist has officially been slapped. But is that enough, really? Here to discuss this and what should happen to the other sitting lawmakers who also helped fan the flames of the January 6th insurrection is Josh Holland. Josh is the host of We've Got Issues and a progressive trying to make it through this pandemic. Josh, thanks for joining us on the program today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Julianna. I appreciate that.
NPR spent the entire morning interviewing people about how Trump has already been held accountable because he's going to be remembered by history as the only president to be impeached twice.
What?
Are you shocked?
I guess NPR is going to NPR, right? I mean,
NPR.
it's ludicrous. Look,
let's clear up quickly why it's important for us to go through with this process of impeaching Trump when he's still out of office, because that's the main talking point everyone's throwing around.
Well, there's a couple of different reasons why it's really important. And I should say that in terms of the Democrats' narrow partisan interests in the short term, it probably would be better for them to move on to other business. You know, the Senate rules require that they finish this process, the Senate trial, before they move on to other legislation. And I think that they would prefer probably just to get going with delivering things to people. It has to be done for a couple of reasons. First, the message to future presidents and to the rest of the world that there are lines that you can't cross. Even if you're president of the United States, even if you have your own party in that is unwilling to convict, you know, this will be something that dogs you, that brings down your legacy at a minimum. The other thing is that he is going to enjoy a variety of very expensive benefits and then be eligible to run again. And what would, if he were convicted, and I don't think Republicans are going to convict, that would strip him of his ability to run again in the future, and also kill all of his pensions and other benefits. So, I mean, but I think that the message that it sends is the real reason that they have to do it, because basically, you know, there is a constitutional mechanism for keeping a president in check. It is impeachment. And if you don't impeach a president for inciting a violent insurrection at the Capitol, then you're basically saying that there is no check on the president, and they can do whatever they want and are effectively above the law. We already have that to a degree in the Department of Justice's recommendations or finding that you can't convict you can't indict a sitting president. So we already are short.
We have a new Department of Justice.
Well, this dates back to the 70s. The finding that you can't indict a sitting president. So that is unlikely to change. Although, you know, it's never been tested in a court of law. They could indict a sitting president. Now we don't have a sitting president. So, but the point that I'm making is that, you know, relative to other political systems, we already we've already given the executive branch a significant amount of protection against being held accountable for wrongdoings in office, and we need to maintain what mechanisms we have in place.
What about the other sitting lawmakers who incited the January 6th insurrection attempt? Do we have mechanisms to hold them accountable? What do you see on the horizon there?
Well, I mean, it's pretty interesting. I think the dynamic that we've seen since the January 6th, the insurgency of dunces, is
I love it.
It's that we don't have our political institutions don't have the will to hold those lawmakers accountable. So what you see is that civil society is stepping into that gap, right? So when you see donors and corporate PACs saying we're not going to send money to lawmakers who disputed the state certifications of the Electoral College votes, that is in part a response to a lack of mechanisms for holding them accountable in the way that we should hold them accountable. I mean, the thing that in an ideal world, I mean, they would face censure or expulsion. That is how we dealt with insurrection lawmakers during the Civil War. But now we are in these very polarized times, and Republicans are not going to. They're not going to hold their own accountable. And practically speaking, it would be very difficult for them to do so, because you're talking about half of Republican lawmakers. Obviously they are not going to support, expelling half of their caucus. So, we're seeing again, civil society step into the fray. This is what big tech is doing in terms of removing accounts that spread, that incited violence with their conspiracy theories about the election, et cetera, et cetera. It's not an ideal situation. It's just, this is all that we have.
Is there anything specifically significant to the progressive movement rather than the country as a whole or Democrats in general that impeachment and moving ahead with the Trump impeachment is significant just specifically to progressives?
I mean, I don't think so, and I think that what we're talking about here is, look, you can have legitimate differences of opinion about a whole wide range of policy areas. We're talking about the legitimacy of our elections, and that shouldn't be something that is an issue for the left or the center left or the center right. That should be something that, whatever your ideological priors are in the United States, in a mature democracy, you should support democracy, small d democracy. So I don't think it is, honestly. I think this is as much of a threat to to center left liberalism as it is to progressivism, certainly.
It seems that the issue of reigniting the Trumpist movement is sort of on the table here. If he gets off, then that gives them another boost. It gives credence to the importance of their movement, whereas maybe in the court of public opinion, a large win by President Biden kind of suggests like, hey, the country didn't necessarily all want crazy Trumpists everywhere. Your thoughts about what this means to the Republican Party?
Well, I mean, we have seen Republicans in disarray to a great degree, and it's these are all ultimately their problems. I mean, these are problems for the Republican brand as a national, competitive party that can go into elections and hope to win by persuading people. Now they are doubling down right now. They're in the process of doubling down entrenching minority rule. There's been 106 new voting restrictions entered into state legislatures by Republicans since the 2020 election. They're really just particularly brazen in states like Arizona, states that flipped
minority rule, even though we have a majority, but then we wind up, because of gerrymandering and other things, like voter suppression in the minority. How come we didn't double down on minority? Did we just not think about it, or were we not aware of the amount of war we were in, or what?
Well, I mean, there's a fundamental difference between the parties, which is that, Republicans at this point do not have a popular agenda. They cannot reach out to a majority of people and say, look, you want
to kill your grandmother.
You want tax cuts for wealthy people, and to strip healthcare their health insurance from 20 million people to pay for them. That is not an agenda that you can really reach out to a large group of people with. The fundamental issue is that this is their governing strategy, but it's not sustainable, right? I mean, it just isn't sustainable. As for what we are doing, Democrats can deliver quite a bit through the process of reconciliation, which is a budget maneuver that allows them to pass budgetary issues with a simple majority and not worry about the filibuster. They're going to have 3 shots at budget reconciliation before the 2022 midterms, up to 3 shots, I should say. And there are things that they can't deliver through budget reconciliation. And first and foremost amongst them are 2 bills in the House called H.R. 1, the For the People Act, and H.R. 4, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. These are fundamental election reforms that are really comprehensive, and they deal with gerrymandering, they deal with disclosure of campaign contributions, they deal with restrictions on voting, they guarantee same-day registration, et cetera, et cetera. There's a long laundry list of very important reforms that would make an even playing field for elections, right? And those things cannot pass with a simple majority in the Senate. So, Democrats are pursuing their immediate agenda in terms of COVID relief. And I think that, that should be job number 1 if they want credibility to then advance other parts of their agenda. If they can't contain the pandemic and get support to people who have been screwed in this economy, then everything else is a non-starter. So I think that should be the top priority. After that, they're going to have to face the choice of either killing the filibuster or allowing Republicans to continue to slant the electoral playing field in their favor to a much more significant degree than we've seen so far. I mean, again, there was 106 laws so far in just 3 months since the election have been introduced to restrict voting in states controlled by Republicans.
You've cleared up 2 NPR talking points today. I really appreciate
my job is done here.
Josh Holland. We've got Issues, the podcast. Definitely check it out. Josh, thanks so much for being on our program today.
Thanks for having me, Julianna. I appreciate that.
We appreciate you being a regular here on ACT TV. You're watching ACT TV. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the buttons and the bells and whatnot, because they're down there.